Brian, I've been fascinated by this concept of possible worlds. It sounds like science fiction, but it really is a very deep way of doing philosophy and even trying to get at what is ultimate reality, even a deeper reality than what physicists and cosmologists think about. So help me understand possible worlds.
Okay, I'm going to come at this on two levels. One pre-theoretical and the other theoretical. First, the pre-theoretical answer. Possibilities come in lots of sizes. There's the possibility that you be sitting here. There's the possibility that you be sitting here and I be sitting here. There's the possibility that you be sitting here, I be sitting here, and the couch be a different color, and so on up. But there are some possibilities that are so big that you can't get any bigger. And those, at the pre-theoretical level, are what I'm going to call a possible world. A possible world is a biggest possibility, the biggest possibility of all.
So what does that mean? That means it encompasses anything that you can think about has an answer in that possible world.
Exactly. Or here's another way to put the same thought. Take any pair of a proposition and its negation. In a possible world, just one of that pair will be true.
But it's every proposition.
Every proposition, okay. Every pair of a proposition and its negation, every pair has one member true in a possible world.
Wow, okay. And that's literally an infinite number of things.
Right. So that's the general pre-theoretical thought of what a possible world would be. Then where the metaphysics comes in is, what is it that plays this role in your metaphysical theory? What are these entities, these largest possibilities? You can sort the theories there as actualist and possibilist. Possibilists believe that possible worlds include many things which aren't actual existing things. David Lewis thought there are many existing things that aren't actual, and that some of those are possible worlds.
Okay, many existing things that aren't actual.
Yeah.
So let's carefully unpack that.
Okay.
It's an existing thing. That means it really exists, but it's not actual, meaning it's not in our world, so to speak. It's not part of our existence.
Yeah, see, Lewis thought that possible worlds were universes a lot like ours, and he used the word actual to mean basically the one within which we're sitting.
Okay.
He thought it was sort of a pointing word, just like you use here to point to the place you're at, and now you point to the time you're at.
Yeah.
Lewis thought with actual, you point to the possible world you're at.
Okay.
So for him, there are just all these existing things, and you point to the one you're in by saying it's the actual one.
Yeah. Now, this doesn't mean multiple universes, because if we're in multiple universes in our physical world, that's still part of our actual world, all those physical universes.
There are at least some ways of parsing out what multiple universes would be, where it wouldn't be what Lewis meant. On the other hand, there are other ways of parsing out what multiple universes would be, which would be exactly what Lewis meant. So it just depends on how you define the term.
Okay.
The other sort of possibilist was Alexius Meinong. And Meinong thought there were actual things that don't exist. So we're actually in a universe that exists and in which you and I are sitting here on the couch. But among the actual things that don't exist is a universe in which you're actually down at Starbucks having a coffee right now, and I'm sitting here on the couch wondering where you are. Possible worlds, according to Meinong, are, well, we're in one, and then there are all these other actual things that happen not to exist that would be universes if they did exist.
How about things like unicorns?
For Meinong, also actual but non-existent.
So a unicorn does not exist, but it's actual because we have the idea of it. We're thinking about it in this world that we know exists.
It's actual not because we have the idea of it. It would be actual, according to Meinong, even if we didn't have the idea of it.
If there was a possibility of it? What gives its existence in our actual world? Okay,
well, again, for Meinong, it doesn't exist. It's actual, but it doesn't exist. Why is it part of the actual world? I think for Meinong, it just is. There's no place it comes from. It's just one of these ultimate brute facts about the way things are.
Okay. So those are the actualists.
Okay, those are the possibilists, the ones who believe in things which aren't both actual and existent, but are possible. Actualists are the other great division of the theories. They believe only in actual existing things. And so they say possible worlds have to be certain actual existing things. They differ over just which actual existing things are the possible worlds. Some say that they're propositions, some say that they're properties, some say that they're sets of certain sorts.
Okay. So how are actual and possible worlds used in philosophical analysis and indeed in trying to discern ultimate realities, if that may include God?
Possible worlds are used in philosophical analysis mostly as a way of understanding what it is you're talking about when you say things like necessarily such and such or possibly such and such. Philosophers tend to interpret the statement necessarily such and such as meaning such and such is true in all the possible worlds. And they interpret the statement possibly such and such as saying that such and such is true in at least one possible world. So it's primarily to understand the ordinary language terms necessarily and possibly that they bring these posits in.
Okay.
All sorts of other uses build out of that one, but that's the basic one.
And theologically, how then can you use that to try to discern what God is or what the structure of God's creation is?
Well, you can use possible worlds, for example, in an argument for God's existence. There's a version of the ontological argument that does that. And some people will say, therefore, that if you start with possible worlds, you can get to God's existence in the end. You can use possible worlds to explain what it is for God to be a necessary being, and so you can use them to explain God's nature. I tie possible worlds to God in a slightly different way. I think there really aren't any such things.
Are not.
Are not. Neither the actualist sort nor the possibilist sort. But I think that
So you're a skeptic.
I'm a skeptic about possible worlds entirely. But I think there is something we're really talking about when we're using the words necessarily and possibly. We're talking about ways God would permit things to be. If something would be so in at least one way God would permit things to be, then it's possible. If something would be so in all the ways God would permit things to be, then it's necessary. So I would say there are things we're talking about, but they're not worlds. They're really ways God is, permissions God has issued or wouldn't issue or would issue or could issue.
So you're a radical Godist. Not goddess, Godist.
Yeah.
In the sense of almost what used to be called occasionalism, where God, everything that happens, God has to cause in some way. You don't go that far.
No, the thesis I've just stated doesn't really have anything to do with whether God makes things happen in the world. I'm talking about something at the level of what determines what's possible.
That seems even more radical.
Well, it's at a more basic level,
Yeah.
But it doesn't imply, for example, that God is making me speak or that God is the only cause that does anything in the universe.
Okay.
It just says that God determines the ultimate boundaries of what could happen. He might very well leave what does happen up to us.